Welcome to Business Minus the BS with me, your host, Michael Griffiths.
Hello everybody and welcome to Business Minus the BS. Business Minus the BS is a business focused podcast, but the idea behind it is to cut through all the fluff, the nonsense, the woo-woo crap, and just get straight down to business with useful, actionable information that you can use to improve, grow and maintain your business. So today I have someone on the show, a very special guest, somebody who is much like myself, an expert in time management, but not only that, she is an expert when it comes to systems, administration and so on. She is the one-stop shop for everything you need digital. The person that I'm introducing works with realtors and people like that, but she has an incredible skill set. So without further ado, welcome to Business Minus the BS with me, your host, Michael Griffiths, and a very special guest, Mary Tice.
Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Would you mind taking a moment to introduce yourself, tell us about who you are, what you do, why you do it, that sort of thing?
Sure. My name's Mary Tice, and I run a business called A Cup of Social that over the past few years has kind of evolved from what started off as just online social media management, has evolved to all of the processes that I use. I help coach people on. I take clients and use these time management processes to help streamline their workload. And basically, I have learned the art of automation so I can do more. We all know that we only have so much time in a day, so I do my very best to utilize that time as effectively as possible. And what I like about your stuff is you eliminate the BS. I like to eliminate the BS because it gets you nowhere.
You and I, although we have different backgrounds and whatnot, we have an overlapping field of interest with regards to time management. So my first real question is around time management. Specifically, was there a singular event in your life, or maybe a series of events in your life, that made you stop and go, do you know what, I need a system, I need to do something to get my stuff together and be more organized? Or are you just naturally super organized?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I've always been a planner. I'm very introverted. I'm very shy. I don't like new situations. So for me, being able to plan things out makes me very calm. I have 1,001 different planning systems because of it. But as I got older and, went from being in school to being in college, work and everything and working full time, I work in the real estate field. So even though I'm admin, everything is extremely fast paced, and without systems, you forget to do things. You have to have checklists and stuff like that. And I had some health concerns that, gave me a lot of brain fog. So if I didn't write things down, I would be lost, especially if I got a phone call and that led to 3 more phone calls and I'd come back to where I was and I'd be like, I have no idea what I did. So I've developed processes for those things that are recurring tasks that if they can be automated, I automate them so I don't have to think about it. And if they can't be automated, then I have a very detailed checklist that I can just go one by one. So no matter what happens, if I get distracted, I can come back, pick up, and I'm not sitting there for an hour scratching my head trying to figure out exactly what the last thing I did was.
Oh, that's interesting. So for me personally, I wouldn't say an organized person. So I tend to just sort of jump into things and figure it out as I go, which has its advantages at times. But once something goes from being a new thing to a repetition, that way of thinking is an absolute disaster. When I was running my web development business, that was when I started to think to myself that maybe I should start taking my plans out of my head and putting them on paper so that they make a little more sense. And I was sort of slow to start, and then I had some health issues, which really increased the necessity of being more organized. And then
Funny how often that it happens.
yeah, yeah. And I went away and studied pretty much every time management and organizational text and document that exists, it seems like. And I did find a lot of them were just total nonsense. Nobody can operate like that. What a ridiculous fairy world these people live in. So I had to throw it all away and come up with my own system, which is what I use now and it's what I teach to people, and it's much more effective. Which brings me to another question, actually. When you were sort of starting to put all these systems together, were there any that you tried that were advertised to you as the best thing since sliced bread, and you tried it and you thought to yourself, what on earth is wrong with these people? How can they operate like this?
Honestly, there a lot of systems are like that. Actually, when I was selling real estate, the schedule that they put forth, I looked at them, I was like, you realize that you haven't left time for me to sleep or eat or do human things, right? Like, I see these schedules online that the people wake up at like 4 a.m., but they go to bed at midnight. And I'm like, I can't function off of 4 hours of sleep. I need at least a solid 8, or I just can't function. That's not how I can work. I usually, instead of looking at them and then just being overwhelmed, I try to find that one little nugget of information that makes it worthwhile, whether it was a free system I found or one I paid for. It's like, okay, what's that one little thing that I can take away from this that I can then implement? And there have been times when it's been nothing. It's just like, this system doesn't work in any shape, form, or fashion for me. And you can tell when I'm trying out a new system because I'll try like 4 different versions and ways to do it. And then I realize, okay, well, that's not working. And I whittle it down until I find the exact correct thing. And, you know me, I'll even go on Facebook and be like, all right, I have a question for the class. How do I do this? And sometimes the answer is one I want. And then other times people are just like, you can't. And I'm like, well, crap. Like, what's the next thing I can do then that's the closest thing to what I want? But yeah, there's definitely a lot of systems that I feel like they're almost designed to overwhelm you and make you think that the person who's doing them, 1, does them every day, which I guarantee they're not, and 2, that they're some kind of superhuman because they can do those even in one day, even if it's only one day. It's like, it's not superhuman, it's just insanity. So usually, yeah, I try to take all other systems with a grain of salt until I can test them out myself.
You mentioned there actually the what do they call themselves? You know, the 5 a.m. club or whatever they call themselves. Stay up late, get up early. Those absolute clowns.
I believe they call themselves influencers, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. But that is something that is, for me personally, is infuriating. You would not, well, actually, no, you would. You'd be well aware, but most people would absolutely be mortified by how many, and shocked by how many people come forward, to me, absolutely frazzled, their life falling to bits because they've tried out the 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. club and the wheels just fell off and it was a disaster. And I have coached a lot of those people back to,
sanity.
Yeah, get a reasonable amount of sleep. Even if you don't sleep much, relax, eat, drink, go outside, live your life, and so on. So those people, they drive me insane. I'm always moaning about them, I know, but they drive me absolutely insane. And I think they actually set a dangerous precedent because they're not up at 4 a.m. and being productive. They're up at 4 a.m. and posting on Facebook about being productive.
Exactly.
And
or they're actually still asleep and they have schedulers saying that they're up at 4 a.m. being productive.
Yeah. And they then create this, like, within the entrepreneurial space. I'd imagine it's quite prevalent in real estate too, because that's quite such a fast moving industry. But it creates a sense of like, this is how it's done, this is what we should be doing. And then people try and follow this thing that they're doing that they're not really doing, they're just talking about doing. And then everyone falls apart. And then those people, because they're not really doing it, they're still with it enough to be able to go, oh, well, you're not doing it right, when the people struggle. And I said, I coach loads of those people that come out of the back end of that absolutely frazzled. And one thing that I have noticed, I'm sure you probably have too, is that when you take a productive, organized, sensible person, and then you feed them that nonsense, their IQ just seems to vanish, not just shrink, but completely disappear. And they become just bonkers. But then the work they put out becomes sloppy and just terrible. But they're so unaware because they're on an adrenaline high. So in the real estate world, obviously you've got elements of that too, but there's a lot of pressure in real estate, and especially in recent years where it's become an almost sort of, especially over there in the States, it's become an almost celebrity sort of led thing.
Yes.
Got the Josh, whatever his name is, and all of that doing the TV shows and so on. So
even locally, you have people who on the local level, they'll be the YouTube stars, and it's just everybody knows them from YouTube or Instagram. And then you have that local imposter syndrome of the people who are really great at what they do going, well, I don't do all those things. Am I still a good agent?
So in your experience of dealing with those people specifically, like obviously you get the business end of it, so to speak, or the jobs to do to make them look good. So how many of those people come forward, and initially at least you need to like retrain them to be able to deal with you and give you tasks that are going to make them productive and push them forward towards, you know, where they want to be, and steer them away from the hustle mindset that they currently exist in?
I would say probably 90% of the agents I work with, they're not used to, like, I have 20 years experience in my field. So even though I'm young, I've been doing it for all of my adult life. And so I do have to train them of, it's okay if you switch your digital signing company from, you know, the one that's preferred to this one, because you can put everything in there and you can send it to whoever and it's tracked a lot easier and it's going to save you 5 minutes. Or even just you do realize it's not acceptable to call someone at 10 o'clock at night and ask them to write a contract. For starters, the seller's not going to see it until tomorrow morning. The other agent's not going to send it to their client that late, unless, you know, you've literally just had that conversation. And so a lot of times, yeah, there is definitely a training of, you're dealing with a human. I do have a team. My team's very small. It's me and my husband. And if we aren't able to do something, we'll get around to it because we also work for other people. A lot of agents I've worked with, especially in the past, I've gotten a lot better about standing up for myself on this one. They would railroad me 24/7. And because they were constantly going and they were constantly high stress, it made me high stress. Like you said, you give an organized person, you know, too much information and we kind of break. I had one agent that she honestly, I don't think she ever slept. She was always working with clients. She was actually one who was featured on one of the home buying shows on HGTV. So I've literally worked with all the types. And I had to train her to understand that I was a human being who had, you know, human needs. And one of those needs was sleeping, and that it was not acceptable to call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. You want to send an email? Fine. When I get up and I've had a cup of coffee and my brain is functional, I can respond to it and get you what you need. but it is such a, in the world of demand where you have Zillow, where a buyer can reach out to you anytime, day or night, they are trained from real estate school. You have to respond to that lead in the first 5 minutes. I can tell you this from actually doing lead generation phone calls like that. Nobody wants to be called the second they send you an email of, is this, can I see this property? In fact, you'll scare them off and they'll never talk to you again. It's actually better usually to reach out in the same method that they contacted you, which is via email, and send something, in which automation processes are great for, because you can link all of that. And so there's always definitely a bit of retraining that goes in with working with somebody new of, here's what's expected. I am a human being. You're a human being. Let's think reasonably. If you're at dinner and you're eating and you can't do something, there's a really good chance I'm also too eating dinner and can't do something. And the world will not end if it has to wait half an hour, or, even a couple of hours. It's very rarely that that's a problem. And if it is a problem, we do live in a seller's market right now. Things are flying off the shelves, so to speak. I've had issues where I'll be writing a contract for an agent and then they call me and they say, oh, they already accepted another offer. And it's only 10 minutes has passed since I got that initial phone call. And it's like, all right, well, no big deal. Let's go ahead and get prepped for the next one. What else are you showing? And I can have the paperwork pre-done. And it always reminds me of something my dad said, because my dad was in real estate for a while. And he was, let's do the work up front. So when the time to move quickly comes, we can move quickly. And that's something I kind of think about. I have all of my templates set up and I use a system called Dot Loop where I've linked everything with all the fields for the forms that didn't have them and created my own for it. So that way, when the time to move fast happens, I can move fast. And it does make a difference. And it's that little bit of upfront work, but it's made everything so much easier. And so that's what I try to train the agents to do. If you know you're going to be showing property that's hot, let me know in advance and I can have everything pre-filled to where all you have to do is tell me the numbers and I'll drop them in and we're good to go.
Yeah. So in the real estate industry, you have, obviously, there's lots of moving parts to it. So you have the sellers that you're dealing with, but you also have like the legal side of things. You have the I don't know what they call them in the middle, but the people that make introductions and all of that. So communication's a big issue, I would imagine. A bit of a mess, to say the least. At least that's how it appears from the outside. I don't really deal with that many people in that industry myself. Thankfully, they are scary with their relentlessness, but they are, yeah, as far as I can see from the outside, they're all talking at once and no one's really listening. So do you get a lot of time issues caused by delays and things like that, caused by those miscommunications along the way, outside of your control? When that happens, do you have something in place to help you deal with that, or at least, navigate around it?
Luckily for me, usually if there's a time delay, it's not anything I've done. Thank goodness. Occasionally there was an issue back earlier or later in last year, November, when I was moving. A contract didn't get sent for like a week to the attorney. It was my fault, and they had to delay the closing. But then they got delayed even more. So it was one of those things where there was a situation that was my fault because I had been busy moving and everything and then got sick and I owned up my mistake, just said, I forgot. I didn't know the agent didn't send this in. So here you go. And everything got called and everybody was, okay with the fact that things were delayed a couple of days. And then again, by the time it went to close, it was delayed an additional 2 or 3 weeks anyway. So it was no big deal. But yeah, every once in a while, there's things that pop up like that. Maybe funding doesn't come through. One of the biggest holdups in real estate with the closing process is, going through the underwriting process of the loan. That's where everything, you can be pre-approved, but if you have not gone through underwriting, you are not approved. That's who tells you you can buy your house. And so occasionally things will pop up. Maybe the appraisal didn't come back in, or there's some repair work, and things take a little bit of time. And I'm just kind of like, all right, well, as soon as you guys know the dates, let us know, because we do, on my end, I have to update paperwork that has to be signed by all the parties saying, okay, here's the new closing date or the new price or whatever. But also too, it gives us the opportunity to call our client if we know as soon as possible and smooth things over. So then by the time it actually rolls around to happening, everybody's already forgot there was a hiccup because it's been smoothed over. And what I like is, today there was actually a closing that happened for one of my clients. I've learned you email at least the day beforehand, if not a couple of days beforehand, everybody, and say, do you have all of these documents? Do you need me to do anything? And so the closing happened today. No problem. I got the confirmation it closed, recorded. It's like, awesome. I didn't have to do anything because I already made sure everything was done. And so now it's just a simple matter of sending an email to the company, and then checks get written. And that's good, because I always tell my clients, my job is that when I'm done properly or do it properly, is allows you to do your job properly so you can have closings. So that way I have more work and everybody keeps getting paid money, and we all like that. And if it wasn't for processes and knowing, exactly when a contract comes in, who all I have to send it to. And if I ever forget, or if I'm sick and had to hire a third party I've never worked with, I can literally send a checklist and say, here's your contacts, here's your checklist, here's what needs to be done. And they can do it without me giving them any direction, because I have it so step by step. And that helps because it just saves time, and you never know when you're not going to be able to work and you need somebody to cover for you.
Excellent. So another thing I wanted to ask was, how much stuff do you end up having to deal with and to do for your clients that you look at and go, you don't actually need this. You don't need this unnecessary step in your process. Obviously, you're there to just do it, and that's fine. But is there many things you come across in the real estate industry that you think, man, this industry could really just get rid of that and it wouldn't even notice?
Yes, we have a lot of forms that are just there to be forms, it seems like. And anytime I work with an agent that's part of a firm I've never worked with, and they tell me, oh, the firm requires all these extra forms, I literally go to the office manager or, account somebody in admin and say, do I really need to submit all these forms? Like this checklist, do you actually need me to fill out this checklist? Or can you just look and see that it's done? Because I know for me, if I got a checklist from somebody, I'm still checking off my own checklist to make sure everything they've given me is actually there. And in some cases, I have managed to eliminate things, and I'll go back to the agent and say, you don't need to do these, but these are definitely mandatory. And in other cases, if it's not something like that, maybe, like I said, I did real estate, I did property management for a long time. As an agent, you're pushed a lot of schedules of, you need to reach out and do this, you need to post on social media and do this, and you need to have this program, this program, this program, this program. And because I have tried them all, I can tell based off of usually about a 10-minute phone conversation, I can tell which kind of agent I'm working with. And I can tell whether or not those processes are going to be something effective in their business and will gain them business, or if it's just going to slow them down. Some agents, they take great notes on their clients. They work great with certain CRMs. And then others, they'll try to use the same CRM, but they realize it doesn't log their phone calls. And it's like, well, now I need one that does. So I'll pull up my list of them and be like, all right, well, here's the ones that I recommend. And here's the ones I've tried that I really don't recommend. based off of what you need it to do. Because a lot of people get busy by the busy work, but also too, they let themselves get overwhelmed because they're told that's what they need when they really don't need half of the programs and systems and software that everybody recommends. It's like, I think even you one time told me I was thinking too much on something. Like I was trying to figure out how to share just a simple to-do list. And you were like, put it in a Google spreadsheet and share that. And I probably,
I remember
I saw
that,
you type that and I just went, that is so stupidly simple. I'm angry that I really didn't do that. And that's what I've been doing since. And it's just like, man, but it's a process like that where I was overthinking something, which is what a lot of agents do. They overthink all the steps. And you sometimes just need somebody to be like, hey, keep it simple. Like go about back a few steps, bring it in. And the simple answer is usually the best one. And it lets you eliminate a lot of the clutter, the apps, the software, all of it that you just don't need.
So recently, well, a few months ago, actually, I guess that's kind of recent, I was doing some work with a chap who's an executive for an energy company. Because of my contracts and stuff, I'm not actually allowed to say which energy company, but one of the big ones anyway. And he had a department of about 100 people under him. And they were using, they had like a proprietary messaging app that's an internal one for their company. And I was given access to it so that I could have a look at their interactions and some other even less exciting stuff. And it was an absolute pig's ear to use. It was a horrendous thing to use. Horrible. It was so unnecessarily complicated. Now, I come from a software development background, so it should be easy. There's not a software on this planet that I can't use. But this, even for me, was complicated. And it didn't really work. So I had a talk with him, and I said, all right, I can't use that thing. And he's like, no, we can't either. I was like, right, we'll stop using it then. Oh, but it's, it's the companies. It's like, cool. So they've spent all that money on it, fine, but you're costing them even more money by being slow collectively. And that's a problem. So get rid of it. If you can't get rid of it, just ignore it. Pretend it doesn't exist. And they trialed it for a few weeks. They stopped using it. They just set up some email points so they could all email to a singular email address that someone checks once a day and then transfers the emails to the right person and gets rid of all the chit chat and unnecessary crap that goes in there. And it was much easier for them that way. And they have since seen a massive increase in productivity, which means their department is making more money for the company. Everyone's happy. And that was the biggest change that I actually got them to make, was to not use that thing anymore. And outside of that, it was just cutting through the ceremony of things. There's a lot of especially those going up to talk to those above them. There was a lot of you've got to talk to this gatekeeper and that gatekeeper and so on. So no, we'll just skip all that. It's unnecessary. You're all in the same building. Yeah. There's no point. You're not spread around the world. You're all in the same building, and there's no one else in that building, just your department. So just go and talk to them. Go and knock on the door and talk to them. So that and the messaging thing I changed, and I'd say it made a massive difference. But it also made them as a team get on better, because there was less stress about, oh, did you get my message? What message? I don't know. And then all the confusion that causes. And that's made an enormous difference, that small change to simplify things. which, as you say, is often the sort of the missing step. So for you, I know you already mentioned that at times you can overthink things and then it can become too complicated. So do you do any, I don't know what the right word is, like an audit of all your processes to figure out whether actually something is, too specific and too complicated and not easy enough, if that makes sense?
Yes, all the time, actually. I have a notebook that I get inspired to work on my workflows at night. Like usually after 9 o'clock, if you see me with a pen and notebook, I am working and just going to town trying to figure things out. And I'll sit down and I'll be like, okay, well, what do I need to change about this? Because it's just not working for me. And the great thing is, because I have created my own systems, even if they use multiple products, I can tweak everything. So, sometimes I'll try using things in Google Docs or Google Drive to see if that works, or I'll use Trello, I'll use Slack. Sometimes I just use email notifications and things like that. And it depends a lot on the client I'm working with and the things they have. If they are somebody who doesn't use Google, then a lot of times me setting up things through Google is not going to be beneficial for them if I need to grant them access to it. So I am constantly going through, and even as recently as this weekend, going through my stuff of, okay, well, when I get a new contract, what exactly are the steps I need to do? How can I make that more efficient? What's the best way to save my email templates? Which, if you have email that you are constantly sending out and you don't have email templates, you need to save them somewhere, whether it's in, a sticky note on your computer or a actual email template if you use Outlook, whatever. It just saves so much time. So I was trying to figure out the best way to have all of that stored. And I probably reworked my system 3 or 4 times just over the weekend, trying to figure it out. But it allowed me going into Monday morning a lot better because I had something more streamlined and easier for me to focus on. So that way I work off multiple devices depending on where I am. It doesn't matter if I'm on my phone, tablet, my desktop. I wanted something that I could very easily follow. And I still have my paper planner that I'll sketch things out for the day, because we all know the science behind writing things down and remembering them. So even if I don't look at my day planner, I know what I have to do because I've written it down the night before. I can then effectively just move through my day without having to worry, did I do this thing? Because now my processes are a little bit smoother than they were last week, and I already know what I have on my game plan for like the whole day.
When you first got into doing what you do, obviously I know you said it started out as social media management. When you first started doing that, what was the driving force behind actually, taking the leap and starting to do that for people?
I hated working for someone else. One of the things about being a salaried employee, especially in the US, is it doesn't matter how good you are at your job, you're not going to make more money. You want to take a vacation, but chances are you are going to get denied, and you only have a very finite, like 2 weeks max. And that's, if you're lucky. For a lot of jobs, at least in the real estate sector around here. I love the industry I work for, and I would love to be able to reshape it for admin, because it is terrible for admin if you are a typical salaried employee. So I wanted to get away from that. I wanted it to be where if I managed to take my job and to turn it into something that freed up 2 hours of my time, I could not only use those 2 hours to do something new, but get compensated for those 2 hours that I freed up. And so when I left my job that I had then, the whole purpose was, I want to work for people. Obviously, I need clients, but I don't want to work for anybody. If I want to work at 3 a.m. and work until 6 a.m., but I've put in a solid 3 hours worth of work, I feel good about that. And I don't want somebody telling me because they didn't see me doing it, well, you didn't really work, because that was a major frustration. This was back in 2014 when working from home was not a standard by any means. That, yeah, I had my boss, if I left at 5 o'clock, he made a comment every single day. And one time I just snapped and I was just like, maybe if you showed up before noon, you'd see that your staff was here at 7. And I was just like, oh, maybe I shouldn't work for this person anymore. Because every single day he makes a comment that grates me to the point that I could be fired for that comment. And he's just going to get somebody new who's willing to stay till 6 or 7 o'clock at night, but they might not come in the morning as early as I do. So it was very much I felt taken advantage of for the job I was doing and not being properly rewarded for the hard work and effort of somebody who came in early, who ate lunch at their desk, who the only personal time I took was when I was sick. I didn't take vacations or anything like that. So it's like, well, I'm not being rewarded for the work I do. And so I decided, when I actually started my business, I told myself I wasn't going to quit my job until I had enough of a client base to support my share of the bills that I had to pay. And so I worked really hard and did exactly that. The second I realized, oh, hey, my bills are covered, I gave my 2 weeks notice and I was gone. And so it was definitely freeing. It's very terrifying all of a sudden waking up on a Monday morning and not having a place to go or a deadline to follow or anything, but just being able to figure it out on your own. And so I definitely had to create processes for that and schedules for that, because otherwise you end up realizing, oh, it's been 3 weeks and I haven't left the house to get a new client. And it's like, that's not very good.
Could you ever see yourself making the transition back to being an employee? Is there anything that could entice you back to the other side, as it were?
I actually have done some work for a couple years. I worked with a real estate company as their main person. I did everything. And actually, in that case, I did enjoy simplifying my job to take on more because I ran their office. And I still work very heavily with them. And I'm just a contract worker now. But honestly, the things I've gotten accustomed to, I work from home. I make my own schedule. So most mornings, I don't start my work day until 10 or 11, but I work until 6 or 7 o'clock at night on things. Because again, I work for real estate agents. Most realtors are showing property in the evening when their buyers get off work, because we don't live in the fictitious world of HGTV where a barista can buy a $3 million house. Everybody works very hard for being able to purchase everything. So they're coming off their job. So I do have to be available more so in the evenings, which is great because, again, it does allow me freedom. But if I went back to a regular job, it would be very difficult. I would have to have an amazing salary with benefits that I just can't offer myself, as well as still maintain so much of the freedom that I've gotten used to. But if you put me just in a cubicle somewhere, 9 to 5, office space style, I would go insane.
You and me both. So obviously you've spent a good deal of time in the world of being an employee. Is there anything in terms of organization and time management, is there anything that you have taken directly from that world and implemented into your own business, or have you just cobbled together your own systems from everywhere?
I've actually my time at my job before I left, that last job I had, I did learn a lot of things that I've taken away. I learned about bullet journaling for the first time from one of my coworkers. She just had a notebook that every single day she wrote the date on a new page and wrote out her to-do list, nothing fancy, just checked it all off and would make notes throughout the day. And I was like, what are you doing? What is this magical system you have? And she was like, a notebook and pen. And I was blown away because I had never seen it done before. And I started doing that myself. But also too, the company I was with, a lot of the agents had what they called power hours, where if they had a sign on their door or on their cubicle that said power hour, you did not disturb them. They were either on important phone calls, like it was their time to either call their clients back, to make emails, to do whatever it was. It was just their time of, I am buckling down. I'm going to get this big bulk task done. And we used it a couple of mornings, 1 month, testing it out in our office, because there was 3 admin that worked, and we did it before the boss came in. We had the door closed and nobody came in and bothered us, and we got done. We were just like, whoa, how much did you get done? And we were just literally baffled by how much work we could do when we didn't take unnecessary phone calls because we were making phone calls. We didn't let people knock on the door and just waltz in and start a conversation with us. And I probably did about 4 hours of normal office work in that 1 hour time frame. And that's definitely something I've implemented, where you'll even see on my day-to-day planner of work block, primary focus, this task. And it will be dedicated to one particular client of, this is what I'm going to do. I'll get it done. When I get done, I'll take a break, reset, come back, start again. So those were probably the 2 big things I took away was, the bullet journaling, which I got into, which has evolved to my own versions of paper planning, and just the power hour of being able to tell people, no, come back in an hour and then we can talk. But right now I am focused on this task and this task alone.
So the power hour thing that you mentioned there. So I actually do a similar thing myself. It's not actually an hour because I have the attention span of a gnat. So I work with what I call my optimal focus period. So it's the most amount of time I can focus at, fully focused before it starts to wander a little, before my mind starts to wander a little, which doesn't take much, let's be honest. So I implement that, but I have, I don't know anyone in the room. My phone lives on silent anyway, so I just ignore it. I turn it over so I can't see it. I just ignore it. I put some music on. I pick a song or 2 or a single album or something to just go over and over. So I end up losing track of time. So I'm in a complete bubble then. And when I'm in that bubble, I will type at exactly the same speed as normal, yet twice, maybe 3 times as much comes out. I don't know how, it just sort of happens. So that's something I implement too, which is really helpful. And I've been teaching that to my clients as well, which has been successful, actually, much more so than I thought. I honestly thought people were just going to be like, nah, yeah, I'll listen, but I'm not going to do it. But
I find most people realize that, oh, hey, even if it's just 5 minutes of pure focus time, it's better than not having that 5 minutes.
Yeah. So I started teaching it to people, and they started doing it. I mean, initially people were just like, yeah, it sounds interesting, and they just carried on doing whatever they were doing. But eventually people started to listen, and I did geek out over it. I fully researched the science behind attention and focus and all of those things. That's just part of me, I guess. I tend to over research things. So yeah, when I was teaching it to people, I was boring them to death with the science behind it as well, just because I thought it was interesting. And they started doing it. And they'd come back to me and say, I got so much done, I was so productive, I had so much energy afterwards, because there was no distractions pulling me off course, making me have to switch modes all the time and things like that. And it's been really beneficial, which is nice. So it's nice to know I'm not the only one. But people often look at me like, no, I'll just sit at my desk for 6 hours and see what happens. Like, fine, but you'll do about 2 hours of work doing that. So
yes, one of the things that I did learn transitioning from working in an office to working at home is the amount of time we waste in an office just wasting time. I mean, I could, we, at the last job, I had before I started my own business, we had a afternoon ritual that we called Fresh at 3, in which one of three of us would go make a pot of coffee. And it wasn't anything major. It was one of those like big instant ones where you just dump the coffee in and shove it in like 10 minutes, the whole pot's done. So it never took a lot of time or anything, but it was one of those things that once I was home, I was still making myself coffee every afternoon at 3 o'clock because I had gotten used to it. But it was funny how it went from not it seeming like it wasn't that long of a thing to, oh, I suddenly have a half hour of time because I'm not standing around somebody's desk drinking a cup of coffee, chit-chatting because I've hit the afternoon slump because I'm bored because I actually don't really have that much work to do, but I don't want to take on a new task because then the boss is going to expect me to continue that new task and I'm not going to get any compensation. It's just a vicious cycle of time wasting. Or even, going to go get copies made and having to say hello to everybody, how much time that kind of eats up because heaven forbid you don't say hello to everybody on your way to the copier, then you might just be being rude. And
Yeah.
I live in the South, so, we do have a lot of manners like that kind of thing. And so, it's funny to watch shows like The Office or Parks and Rec that take place in workplace settings, and see that, and I've just been like, oh wow, I always wonder how they get all their work done, but really, when I think about it, I worked probably just as hard as they did and just as much in an office setting, and you suddenly realize when you're working from home, oh, I did about 2 hours work and it took me 8 hours to do. How am I going to fill up those other 6 hours?
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing I noticed when I started to really organize myself, is that I had lots of extra time, and it was really quite tempting, almost painful not to do it, in fact, to fill that time. And I had to stop myself one day because something important came up, and I was like, but I've got this, and this to do. But actually, they were just things I'd inserted to fill the time. But I got used to doing them. So then they felt important, because familiarity is, it feels important when it's familiar. So, and something important would come up, and I was deliberating what I should drop in order to do this thing, or whether I should just not do this thing or put it off. Stop myself, what are you doing? Shouldn't even be doing these things in the first place. That important things come up. That's the only thing you need to do. All these other things, just a complete and total waste of time. And I stopped doing them, and I dropped them all at the same time, and it was weird. I didn't know what to do with myself. I found myself just wandering around the house, just bored. I didn't know what to do, and I probably should have dropped them one at a time, but I'm an all-in kind of guy, all or nothing. So I went for it, and I found myself with all this extra time, and now I dread the thought of someone filling up that time. I really do, because I've got used to having that free time now. So I'm homeschool my son. He is autistic, so things require a little bit extra explanation, like the emotional context that comes along with anything is the bit that requires the extra explanation for him. So I'm able to just sit and just chat with him, and until he really gets things and stuff. Whereas before, I couldn't really do that because I was busy. But I wasn't busy, I was just doing busy work. I got all the actual work done in a very short amount of time because I'm good at
You're
what I do.
being busy but not being productive.
Yeah. I found having that freedom, that extra time to be able to lean into the other things in life that actually matter, the things that are the reason we do business in the first place. If somebody was then to come to me and say, oh, I need you for 8 hours, no, not happening. You're not having me for that long. And I don't think I could give it up now.
I say it's very difficult. One of the things that I love is I've managed to cultivate a schedule where my husband goes to his job 4 days a week, and then he has 3 days off for his weekend. And I try to have another day during the week, so not just the Monday that he's off, but some other day during the week that I go and I do what I call, like the house spouse stuff. Like I take care of the grocery shopping, if I need to run to the post office or pay any bills, anything like that. I try to do on, one day that he's at work, so that way our time off together can be time off together. And I would not be able to do this if I had not cultivated schedules to be able to do so. And my clients could attest to the fact that there's plenty of times they call me and they're like, hey, I have this emergency. What are you doing? And I'm like, walking around Target. What are you doing? you know? And I'm able to handle their problems from my cell phone because they're not really problems. They think there's an emergency, but it's really, oh, I actually already took care of that because it's just one of the steps that I take. But they're still getting accustomed to having somebody take care of those steps for them. And somebody that already has thought ahead of, oh, okay, this may happen, so let me go ahead and make sure it's in the correct order for everything. And so being well organized has allowed me so much more freedom. And I'm like, it would be so hard to ever give that up.
Yeah, well, I've found as well dealing with people that when they come to you and say, I've got an emergency, unless the house is on fire or somebody died, it's not an emergency. They're just not prepared.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, just pointing out the fact that it's not an emergency and why it's not an emergency seems to be enough to bring them back from the brink of panic. And then it doesn't feel like an emergency. And then they go, do you know what? This can wait till Monday. And they're all right. There are obviously times where it borders on actual emergency. But in reality, those moments tend to be really quite rare because, we're pretty comfortable in life in the Western world. Food, water, shelter, all the basic necessities. So everything else is luxury and a bonus. And it's part of our life and it's woven into our culture and so on. But there are very few actual emergencies. And when you have those moments of panic, it can be really easy. Like they put the client calls you, oh my God, this and this has happened. It's an emergency. I need you to stop what you're doing right now and help me. My life has fallen apart. And you listen to them and they've got one problem and they feel 3 or 4 different things about it that then creates other problems. And when you really like back to them, then they can come to the conclusion themselves without you telling them that actually it's not an emergency. And then they stop panicking. And I think before I had introduced like systems into my life, I was really caught up in that. It's an emergency. All right, let's go put the fire out. But there is no fire. And having those systems in place really gives me that like time to stop and think and just breathe, before you react, which has been really helpful. And I don't think without studying all those processes and stuff, I don't think I'd have been able to do that. Now, I would imagine dealing with the real estate people that that's an almost daily occurrence for you. Oh my God, this is an emergency. So do you have like a set sort of process that you guide them through just to calm them down so they can see sense?
It usually depends on what the emergency is. In some cases, the emergency is no emergency. They just need to vent. And I'll just stand on the phone for 10 minutes, sitting there drinking coffee or tea, listening to them unload. And then they finally work it out from themselves. Oh, wait, there's actually no problem here. Other times, more often than not, the emergency situation is they, forgot to get something sent to a client or sent to a lender or an attorney, something in that sense. And I'm able to very easily look on whatever device I have handy, even if it's my phone while I'm on the phone with them, and say, oh, no, here's all the forms. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, it's sent. And they're just like, but no. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's sent. It's done. Calm down. And so going through and always having, my checklist to make sure my processes are done and knowing, okay, well, we're this step in the process. So these forms have already been sent to whoever they need to go to. It does make it so much easier whenever they do call, because it is almost always a case of, oh, well, we've already done that. Or, all right, it'll take me 2 seconds. Very rarely is it even something that I say I can't do right this second. And that's typically only because they're calling me when I'm driving, and they've called me 3 times in a row. And I finally answered the call even yesterday, I was driving to run errands and my phone kept ringing, and I handed the phone to my husband and say, send a text to these people of, I'm running an errand. I will call you back as soon as I can. And it still resulted in me taking a couple of phone calls, which was fine while we were out and about. But of course, one of the things that I needed to do was while I was driving, and I told him, I was like, I'm driving right now. I can't send a form while I'm driving. But as soon as I am home, I'm 10 minutes away, I'll take care of it. And so I find if you can't diffuse a situation because it's something you've already handled or you can handle very quickly, establishing a timeline of, I can't do it right now because I'm busy being a human, and I can do it at this time, means that they'll either realize it's not that big of an emergency, or if it can't possibly wait while I'm being busy, then they'll handle it themselves and then just let me know, okay, well, I went ahead and tackled that, which is fine because I have that relationship with them of, okay, well, you don't have to handle all of your stuff, but every once in a while I need to be a human being. And if I can't do it in the very small finite amount of time that you need it done in, then yes, you have to handle it yourself.
Your business, obviously you're doing the admin, you're doing the social media and so on. And obviously that means that you have to be super organized. And when you are working well, it makes your clients just look amazing to their clients, which is wonderful. So is there any advice that you would like to give to people in the real estate industry or any industry really that will help them to be more organized and just be that little bit better? So when the time comes that they actually come and see you and say, I need you to do such and such for me, they can, all of the unnecessary stuff has already been skipped past, or it's been dealt with. They've done everything they can do at their end, and then it's, gets passed over efficiently. So do you have a bit of advice or guidance for those people?
I always say, whenever possible, create, templates of things that you can reuse as often as possible. One of the systems we use is called the multiple listing service. It's MLS for short, which most people have heard of around here. And the one thing that I have asked repeatedly to anybody who will ever listen to me that deals with the system, can we please get autofill features where I can save a template of an area that an agent I work with always works with? So that way I can just click, like one of the neighborhoods down here is Station 1. I can click Station 1 and it autofills with all of the generic information that never changes. And I've been repeatedly told, no. So it's like, all right, well, since you can't help me, I'll do it myself. And I basically have PDFs that I can just highlight the text out of and drop in for things like that. And even though it's not automated and I can't automate that system, I can make that system a heck of a lot easier for myself by having a template. And one group of agents I work with literally has a 4-inch notebook of all of the advertising remarks they've used on communities for years that they can just copy and paste into new things. And it makes things easier to, if you can template them, if you can automate anything, like I said, saving emails that you constantly send. And if you don't know what your process is, if you're just starting off and you have absolutely no clue, I don't know what templates I need to work on, take 5 minutes at the end of your day and just sketch out what you did and see if it is something that actually made you productive. Because my big thing is always be productive, not busy. Nobody likes being busy, but we all like being productive. So if you realize that you're doing a task on repeat that's not making you productive, either see if you can eliminate it or see if you can outsource it. You know, I even work with a lot of agents who they're like, well, I'm new, I can't pay you a salary. I'm like, I don't want a salary. I make money when you make money. My goal is to get you closed and paid. So when you get paid, I then get paid. And once they realize that I'm a package and not an hourly rate that has to be paid each week, they're like, oh, well, I can use you for all of my deals because, you know, I don't have to pay you until I get paid. And it's like, yes. It's like, so it's a way that they're able to outsource that work that has to be done. It is busy work. You know, a lot of administrative work is. It is busy work, but it has to be done in order to complete the process. And so I've eliminated the excess busy, and it allows, you know, everything to flow smoother. So it's like outsource, eliminate. And if you can't do that, then by all means, try to see if you can batch task things. Like if you know you need to edit a whole bunch of photos for your social media, don't sit there and try to do one post, think of the caption, and then schedule it. And then the next pitch, do all of your images at once. Then think of all of your captions and then schedule everything, because then you're focused on that one task that is part of a larger task that needs to be done. But if you're doing all of your photography work at once, you're in one software, you're thinking about one thing, you know, making these images look good or creating them or whatever it is you're doing. And then you can reset, let your brain kind of rest and be like, all right, well, now I actually need to think about all the fluff I want to write with it. And then, you know, once you get done with that, you can move on to the next piece, which is scheduling it and batch tasking. And that goes along so well with like the power hour stuff that I mentioned before of what can you focus on to get a lot done quickly. And it's just because you eliminate your brain having to reset every time you go to a new task. So you're able to get it done a lot faster.
Excellent, excellent. Cool. Well, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. And there's some really useful and helpful information for people out there. And it is interesting to talk to someone else who is as into time management as I am, because there aren't that many of us. So
it doesn't seem like it. People like being busy.
Yeah, so it is nice to find someone else in that area and chat and actually find that there are lots of similarities. So there's, you know, there is kind of a not a set way of doing things, but there's definitely a theme to things, you know. So that's nice.
It's all about finding the system that really works well for you. I don't think flying by the seat of your pants actually works long term for anybody, if they're being honest. And if they say that they do it long term, I guarantee they have an assistant that follows them around to actually put all the pieces in place. But aside from that, it's if paper planning doesn't work for you, but digital planning does, great. If you need a combination of both, great. Or if, you know, time blocking doesn't quite work for you because you actually need to finish on, you know, something from start to finish, I don't know, whatever it may be, it's always just finding those little things that can work for you, that can make your brain just go, thank you. And once your brain says thank you, everything else starts falling into place.
Indeed it does. So my final question, I'm quite aware of time, so I don't want to keep you all day. My final question is, where can people find you? And if those working in the real estate industry in your area want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
All of my socials are cup_of_social. So cup of social. And I do write a blog, cupofsocial.blogspot.com, but I'll be perfectly honest. Between the move and taking on a bunch of new clients over the holidays, I haven't posted anything recently, but I'm getting back on track with that thanks to my wonderful scheduling. But anybody who wants to work with me, Instagram is usually, honestly, Instagram and Twitter are the best places to reach out to me. And again, that's, cup_of_social. And I'm the chick with the blue hair, so it makes it a little bit easier to find me. That's my profile image for those. And I do tend to share insights into my life outside of what I do on those things because they are related to my blog. I am going to be starting a new company just dedicated to the real estate side of things here soon. So that way my clients get a little less confused by the name A Cup of Social. But all of those announcements will be on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So that's always the best place to find me, is on social media.
Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time this evening. I guess it's this afternoon for you. Yeah. I really appreciate it. It's been a really interesting chat, and I hope we can do this again at some point.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And as I say, it's been really nice to chat. Talk about time management with someone here who gets it rather than just needs it.
Yes, it's been quite enjoyable for me as well. I've definitely had fun.
So that was my discussion with Mary Tice. And I'm sure you'll agree, it was extremely interesting. And I'm sure there's lots of things uncovered in that discussion that will be extremely beneficial to you as a business owner. I think the biggest takeaway, for me at least, from all of that is to find the systems, the processes, the procedures, the things that work for you. Don't pin yourself down into another guru or whatever system. Just find what works for you. And if you don't know what works for you, then try lots of different things. Try some things out, see how they go. If it feels good to you, if it feels like it's helping you achieve your goals, pushing you towards your end game, and it's actually making you that little bit more productive, that little bit more effective, then it's working. So try some things out, try some systems out. And then when you get to the end of that list of systems and find there isn't actually one out there already that meets your criteria, then put one together. Use what you've learned from all those different systems, bring bits from each system together and create a system that is completely bespoke and that works for you. So that was the biggest takeaway for me from all of that, is to find a system that works for you. And I could not agree more with that sentiment, because there are so many times as business owners that we get caught up into other people's systems and procedures and so on, that we feel like that's the way to do it, like that's the only way to do it. And we end up creating so much extra work for ourselves because we've got lots of unnecessary extra steps. So find something that works for you and streamline it as much as possible. And at every opportunity, take some time to assess whether it is still working for you so that you can maintain peak efficiency. So yeah, that was my discussion anyway with Mary Tice, and I have really enjoyed it. It was really interesting, and it's nice to talk to somebody who is as in the know, shall we say, about time management as I am. So it's really good to have that discussion. So I hope you have found something that you can take away and implement. And I just want to say thank you very much to Mary for joining me for this conversation that we had, and thank you to all of you for listening to our conversation. So until next time, this has been Business Minus the BS, and I have been your host, Michael Griffiths.